All right, up next, gear review on the Sony PSX65. Now this particular turntable, I actually have a repair video on it, and I think it's a lengthy repair video. It's before I started breaking things up into smaller chunks, and you can see just what you might be getting yourself into if you decide to pick one of these up and it decides to either stop working or you get one that you think is a good deal and you try to get it up and running. So Sony PSX65, as far as I could tell, what I found on the internet, manufactured between 1980 and 1981. It is a direct drive, fully automatic turntable. It's a pretty big turntable. The dimensions are 19 by 6.5 by 17. Weight is 29 pounds. In terms of the series information, this was a part of the X5 series, if you want to look at it that way. So when you're looking at that particular series, you're talking about the X75, which I will have a gear review on one of those as well. The X65, the 55, and the 45. Now, these weren't the only turntables that they sold, but this is the particular series, the one I just referenced, right, that this turntable belonged to. So as you can see, the aesthetics, this is kind of moving from that, late 70s wood and silver, apportioned turntable to one with a more modern look moving into the 1980s. There is, a wooden strip down here, so you still have some wood accents. Then you have black and silver. And this is actually kind of a speckled black. It does not stand up well in terms of scratches, so these get scratched really easily. At least the 65 and the 75 that I ever scratched pretty badly. So definitely a different aesthetic. In fact, both of mine have a crack in the same spot on the dust cover, which is funny. I mean, it's almost an identical crack on both turntable covers. So, and a lot of the ones that are out there for sale have cracks in that similar spot, which I think is kind of weird. So as you can see, the aesthetic may or may not be for you. It's kind of a transitional piece, going from the 70s to the 80s. As I mentioned, it is direct drive. There is no belt. It's fully automatic. It also adds this auto sensing, right? This auto sensing function where you put a record on, and assuming the record is dark, the turntable will actually sense the size of the record and adjust the tone arm lead in and the speed of the platter. So the way it does that is when you turn it on, right, a light shines through this little light housing right here. The prisms here will pick up, there are sensors underneath that will pick up, right, where it is not receiving the light or where it is receiving the light, actually. And then it will adjust to the side of the record. Now, this will get you into trouble, though, if you are using any type of translucent record. And I have some really, really dark, like purplish translucent records. Like I have a Police record and I have a Cramps record. And it's still sensitive enough to where that really dark translucent record will show up. And what happens is if it doesn't sense a record, the tone arm starts to come over and then it goes back. So you put a translucent record on, the tone arm will start to come over and then go back. So you have to either do it manually or you can actually shift this dust cover over or put like a cork dust cover on it or something like that. But I just usually manually play it on here if I'm going to use this turntable for one of those records. So in terms of ease of operation, really simple to use. Everything's clearly marked what it does. You have an on-off button, a motor on-off, arm transport, so that moves the arm in or out. You have a tone arm elevator button up and down. You have a speed selector. You have a repeat button, stop, start, and then you have anti-skate. What I really like about the X65 is you don't have the BioTracer arm, and I'll talk about that when I do the review on the 75. I like this traditional arm much better. It's much easier to adjust. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the 75 and what I have to do to adjust that, because like the 75, this is a part of my 90% club. It's 90% working. The only thing that doesn't work on this, I think, is the repeat button and I think it will automatically sense the speed. No, I think I can do that too. I think it's just the repeat button that does not work. But I haven't played this one for a while, so I'm not sure. So very easy to use. In terms of serviceability, so these are a nightmare to work on. If you watched my video on the PSX65, you'll see the complexity that went into like the engineering on this particular series, right? This turntable, as an example. So definitely an advanced piece of gear to work on. Lots of gremlins in here. It's full of integrated circuits that are no longer produced. There are LEDs that do several different things. So you're not just talking about, right, the record size sensor, but you're also talking about the movement of the tone arm, the speed of the platter. All of these are gauged by either LEDs or measured by LEDs or regulated by LEDs, right? And you also have two coils. I'm pretty sure this has two coils like the 75, but there are two coil wraps that actually help with the sensors realizing where the tone arm is in space, if that makes any sense, right? So you have all of this complex circuitry to understand the speed of the record, the movement of the tone arm, where the tone arm is in space, where it should drop. All of that is done by really complex circuits and like logic controls, chips and circuits and all that kind of stuff. And typically these aren't working. At a minimum, when you get one of these, they typically will need a recap, because once those caps start to drift, that's where those integrated circuits, they will not perform optimally. Those coils that I'm talking about, those are coils with wires that are as thin as a hair, it seems, and they will break, and they're just insane. It's just an insane thing to work on. Much more complex than like a Denon. Well, at least the Denons that I've worked on were a little bit simpler to work on than this one. And I think they're probably a little bit more reliable. So if you're thinking about getting one of these for parts, just understand that you may do everything you're supposed to do, and you may have an integrated circuit that has failed and you're just SOL. There's nothing that you can do at that point. So if you're thinking about getting into one of these, now price, because these are kind of rare turntables, pricing information is kind of hard to find in terms of like when I've shot this video. I will tell you what I have seen in the past is that if you were to pick one of these up to where it's been completely recapped, completely restored, it's in perfect cosmetic shape, right? Not with the typical broken dust cover in one of the, hinges or one of the corners where the hinges sit. Not a lot of scratching on the top. Everything is working the way it should. Original head shell. So this is actually a Sony moving coil that I have not tested yet, but I typically have the Sony head shell on it. And this head shell alone is like $75 or $100. So, right. So anyway, assuming everything it's like you're pulling it out of a box and it's brand new and the capacitors have all been changed, probably $700-ish, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but you're looking at $700-ish, maybe more, right? To get one working, so this is one I would consider working minus, right? Because we do have a cracked dust cover. Almost everything is working the way it should, except for like the repeat function. So I would say one like this, you're looking at that $500 to $550 range, right? So $500 to $550 for a working example. And then for parts, this one I picked up for about $300 off of eBay shipped, right? So you're looking at less than $400, which is still that's a lot of money to spend on something that you may not be able to fix, right? And again, if an integrated circuit is gone on this, there's nothing you can do. There are some other features though I didn't mention, and I'm just kind of picking up on these now. So that was the pricing information. The few things that I forgot to mention that make this turntable really cool: you have VTA adjustment on the fly, so you can change the height of the tone arm as you're listening to a record if you wanted to, if you thought that was a good idea. So I think that's an important function. It does have traditional tracking, right? Tracking adjustments. So you just turn that little weight in the back. It has an adjustable tone arm stand. So if you do change the VTA, you may have to change that, or you may want to change that. But I know that I just forgot those few features. So anyway, that is the Sony PSX65. Great turntable. Again, if you can get one working, fantastic. If you're looking at one of these for parts, just understand you may go through a whole bunch of work and not get it fixed, or get it, you may not even get it fixed, right? It may not run. So I'm going to wrap it up on this one. I'm going to follow this up with the PSX65, and then I'm going to do a head-to-head comparison between the two. And I'll talk about which one I prefer and some of the differences between the two tables. So as always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.